Tat prasanga anubhavena. Because of associating with King Rantideva, when talking with him about Bhakti Yoga. Rantideva anuvartinaha. The followers of King Rantideva, that is, his servants, his family members, his friends and others. Abhavan became yoginaha, first-class mystic yogis, or bhakti yogis. Sarve, all of them. Narayana Parayanaha, devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. All right, translation. All those who follow the principles of King Rantideva were totally favored by his mercy and became pure devotees, attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Thus they all became the best of yogis. So you can repeat. All those who followed the principles of King Rantideva were totally favored by his mercy and became pure devotees, attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Thus, they all became the best of yogis. So, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The best yogis or mystics are the devotees as confirmed by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter, text 47. Yoginam api sarvesham adgatenantaratmana shadabham bhujate yomam samayuktatamo. Of all yogis, he who abides, or always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. The best yogi is he who constantly thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of the heart. Because Rantideva was the king, the chief executive in the state, all the residents of the state became devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, by the king's transcendental association. This is the influence of a pure devotee. If there is one pure devotee, his association can create hundreds and thousands of pure devotees. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that a Vaishnava is meritorious in proportion to the number of devotees he has created. A Vaishnava becomes superior not simply by a jugglery of words, but by the number of devotees he has created for the Lord. Here the word Rantidevanuvartinaha indicates that Rantideva's officers, friends, relatives, and subjects all became first-class Vaishnavas by his association. In other words, Rantideva is confirmed herein to be a first-class devotee or Mahabhagavat. Mahatsevam Dora Mahar Vimuktahe. One should render service to such Mahatmas, for then one will automatically achieve the goal of liberation. Srila Narottama Das Thakur has said, Charya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Bhaiche Eteva. One cannot be liberated by his own effort, but if one becomes a subordinate to a pure Vaishnava, the door to liberation is open. So, Tatprasananu Bhavena, Rantidevanu Vartinaha, Abhavan Yogina Sarve, Narayana Parayana. So, Omagana Tivanandasha Gananja, Shalakaya Chakshuru Meditam, Yena Tasmai, Shigurave Namaha. So, of course, this is a common theme that we find throughout Srila Prabhupada's books, and of course every morning we're chanting Yasha Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasha Prasada Katopi. That by the mercy of the pure devotee spiritual master, one gets the mercy of Krishna, and if one doesn't please the spiritual master, one doesn't get the mercy of Krishna. This is a very common thing, and of course in the teachings of Jadabharta to King Rahugana, there's a similar topic mentioned. Maharaj Rahugana is asking Jadabharta about how does one become Krishna conscious. Of course, first you got to ask yourself, why do you want to become Krishna conscious before you say, how do you become Krishna conscious? Why do you want to become Krishna conscious? I mean, there's a whole variety of reasons. One, get happy, relief from distress, and your life becomes auspicious. It's the only means of attracting to Krishna, the way to achieve. Anyway, there's different reasons for becoming Krishna conscious. But let's say if one decides to become Krishna conscious, and also you don't have to suffer repeated birth and death in the material world, you have a purpose in life, your loving propensity is satisfied, you understand who you are, I mean, all sorts of things. What's that? Microphone doesn't work. No, even if I swallow it, there's nothing coming out. See? Even if I swallow, that still doesn't work. So it's useless. So, anyway, whatever, there's various motivations for becoming this better. Do we get a hum from it too? It's gratuitous. Hare Krishna. Okay. So, there's many reasons for becoming a pure devotee, but let's say if one decides they want to be a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Jadabharta actually gives you the methodology for becoming a pure devotee. This verse that I often quote. Rahuganaitat tapasad niyati nachejya nirvapanat rahatva nachandasanaiva trilagni suryar vinamahatpada vijo bhishekam. He says that basically we have many different ways that we think we can become Krishna conscious with. Tapasa, Rahuganai tapasa, that sometimes by austerity. And actually we can look through different Vedic literatures to find different austerities to perform. I mean, for example, even in our Vaishnava liturgy, we have things like Chaturmash, right? You've heard of Chaturmash? Chaturmash austerities. You have things like the Nirjala Kadasi, Pandava Nirjala Kadasi austerity. You have all these different austerities. And I'm not decrying these austerities. I'm not saying that they're not good. All I'm saying is that we have a whole bunch of austerities. Tapasa nayati. Nor can you become Krishna conscious by taking sannyas. Yati. Just like there's a village right next to Govardhan called Yatipur. Some say Jatipur, depending on your pronunciation. But actually, Sanskrit pronunciation would be Yatipur. That means the village of the sannyasi. And the reason it's called the village of the sannyasi is because it's Madhavendra Puri's village, or right next to Govardhan, where Madhavendra Puri installed Gopal. And so in that particular village, when someone asks me for a donation, I just tell them, it's my village, because I'm a sannyasi and you're not. You understand? My procedure to do that. So anyway, so Nayati. So no one cannot become Krishna conscious by taking sannyas, nor by being a good grahasta. That doesn't mean no one should take sannyas and no one should be a grahasta. But these things don't make you Krishna conscious. The chanda, nor by putting yourself in fire in the middle of the summer, nor by putting yourself in ice cubes in the middle of the winter, nor sleeping on a bed of nails Because the verse doesn't say better males, but I'm just extrapolating on that. Maho b'shekam. Mahapada Rajo b'shekam. Only by taking the dust of the feet of a pure devotee can one actually become Krishna conscious. So actually, the reason I'm mentioning this particular verse is I've noticed since Srila Prabhupada left the planet that people come up with a whole bunch of austerities, and I'm not saying that these austerities are not bona fide or not there in the Vedic literatures. That's not what my point is. But they come up with a whole bunch of austerities that become sometimes of a higher priority than Srila Prabhupada's instructions. A higher priority. Because, in life we got to prioritize things. Things that are more important, things that are less important. I mean, for example, in my life, I prioritized coming to Mangalarti. And so that means I can't stay up late at night having a good old time every night. It's just like life. Even though I'd like to just party every night, enjoy myself in different ways. I'm in a Krishna conscious way. Fill up my guitar, have a hootenanny. Of course, you probably don't know what a hootenanny is, unless you're born in America. So, Krishna conscious hootenanny. Still, you prioritize. So, what happens is that Srila Prabhupada has given us a priority, and that priority is actually mentioned here in this purport in a very clear fashion. It says, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that a Vaishnava is meritorious in proportion to the number of devotees he has created. Now, you can take that in one sense, that, all right, that's how we'll judge you. We'll judge you by how many Vaishnavas you created. I mean, that's really not why Prabhupada's saying that we go around to each and every devotee and say, how many devotees did you create? How many did you create? Actually, create is actually a very important point, too. I was just studying a Christian book the other day. I become a Christian, not really. And it was a very interesting book. The book is called The Purpose-Driven Church. And I found it very interesting in applying it to our Krishna conscious movement. But one thing I noticed there is that his whole methodology or purpose or focus was on creating new devotees of Christ. Disciples. He calls them disciples of Christ. And that's interesting. And he was establishing a church in an area where there are many other churches. Because in America, there's churches everywhere. So his whole concept was not to take people from other churches. In fact, when people came from other churches, wanted to join his church, he just sent them back. There were several reasons for that. One is that they had preconceived notions of what a church should be, and he had his own vision, and of course his church grew to like 20 or 30,000 people every Sunday. Interesting, isn't it? Anyway, so he didn't take people from other churches. In fact, he discouraged people from leaving other churches. He went to what they call the unchurched. And he went out and he basically went to people who weren't even Christians. And some people were Hindus too. And he brought them into his church. Very interesting. So, that's really what Prabhupada means here. Creating. Not people already devotees, taking them from one mouth to another, whatever. That's not creating devotees. So, of course, we see that Srila Prabhupada created, I would say, hundreds of thousands or millions of people as devotees. I mean, not that he initiated everybody, but he exposed people to the chanting of Hare Krishna. And it's described, if one chants Hare Krishna once, that person is considered a devotee in one sense. And then we offer respects in the mind. We don't offer respects, or dandavats to everybody who says Hare Krishna. Of course, that would be real humble. You might make spiritual advancement if we did that. We went out in the street and say Hare Krishna. Okay. Please accept my obeisance, all glory to Prabhupada. So anyway, so that's what Rupa Goswami says. We offer respects in the mind. So Prabhupada, millions and millions of people, like maybe hundreds of millions of people heard the Hare Krishna mantra because of Srila Prabhupada's mercy. And so Srila Prabhupada has actually done that. One person has made the Hare Krishna mantra a household word, basically. Just like yesterday, I was going through American immigration, and they asked me, what religion are you? And I said, I'm from the church. And I said, what religion? I said, Hare Krishna. Have you heard of that? And I said, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Hare Bol, Prabhu. No, they didn't say, she didn't say that, unfortunately. So, anyway, so that's the standard. We can judge someone if they've made, which Srila Prabhupada has certainly made, millions and millions of pure devotees. And also there's other standards, too, of like how you understand someone to be a pure devotee or Mahabhagavad. Prabhupada gives a standard in the Upadeshamrita. He says someone who never deviates from Krishna consciousness and is always thinking on how to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. I'm paraphrasing it, of course. That's how Prabhupada defines or describes a Mahabhagavad. So, getting back to the point, it's not that we should use this particular standard to judge people. Go around and say, how many devotees you make, Prabhu? How many devotees you make? Oh, you could be very pure. That's not really what Prabhupada is indicating here. He's indicating that the highest priority, implicitly, a lot of devotees in my body right now. They're crawling around. So anyway, so Prabhupada indicates that implicitly, our highest priority is what? Preaching Krishna consciousness, reaching out to others. Sometimes we forget our purpose, why we here. Well, we're here to eat prasadam. We're here to enjoy life. No, we're here to bring more and more people. That's our strategic mission. You understand? More devotees, deeper devotees, connected with Srila Prabhupada. I was thinking about this. Actually, this weekend, when we go to Madhava's house, we're going to talk more about strategic planning for New Goloka, because I was inspired by reading this one book, A Purpose-Driven Church. Actually, a very interesting book. So anyway, so our purpose is more devotees, deeper devotees, connected to Prabhupada, basically. So that's priority. So getting to the point here, to please Prabhupada, to connect with Prabhupada, to associate with Prabhupada, doesn't mean to imitate Prabhupada. Just like the followers of Rantidev here. He was very compassionate, giving up his own eating and everything like that for the sake of the poor conditioned souls, right? So that doesn't mean that his followers imitated him. They couldn't imitate Rantidev. His standard of renunciation, his standard of compassion was unexcelled. Just like we have Vasudev Dutt. Vasudev Dutt prays to remain in this material world so that all the conditioned souls can go back to home, back to Godhead. Now, are we supposed to imitate that? Maybe if you're on that platform. I'm not on that platform. But we understand and serve his intention. And we understand and serve the intention of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like Rupa Goswami, he has actually distilled. Let's talk about the word distilled. Distilled means, let's say you take water. And water is, let's say especially tap water in India, is not something you want to drink. Unless you want to get Delhi Belly or Montezuma's Revenge. Because you probably know what Montezuma's Revenge is. Anyway, unless you don't want to get some digestive problem. So, you can use a RO filter. That means reverse osmosis, which is basically does the same thing as distilling it. But distilling is even a more purifying process. Distilling means you boil the water and you condense it. That's distilling. That's distillation. And you get 100% pure water. That is theoretically understanding that all your instruments are pure. Right? You know, all your distilling instruments are pure, and you get 100% distilled water. So, you know, talking about distilling Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions, or the Vedic instructions, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, we have Rupa Goswami, who did that, and Sanatan Goswami, and the other Goswamis of Vrindavan, of course. Manak Shiksha by Raghunath Das Goswami. We have all these wonderful books given to us. And, of course, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books. Yesterday I read, I think it was a quarter of the Jaiva Dharma on the airplane coming back. You know, very inspiring, because you find the whole essence of Krishna consciousness distilled, you know, presented completely pure, not dealing with Trigunya Vishya Veda Nits Trigunya Bhavarjana Nirvanvo Nitvasakrasto Niryogyashema, not dealing with different injunctions in the three modes of nature that you find in the Vedic many of the Vedic literatures, which we're not supposed to decry. It's interesting. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he presented when he was having this, when he presented the story of the conversation with Brajanath and the Babaji. Bhaktivinoda Thakur presented, Brajanath presenting different points, you know, what about karma, what about yoga, what is the sadhana, and what is the sajja, each of those different things. Sadhana means the practice, sajja means the perfection. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained in the Vedic literatures, you have so many different sadhanas for achieving different purposes, and most of them are under the three modes of material nature. And for each sadhana, there's a sajja, or goal. Sajja means goal, you know, the reason for doing that sadhana. You know, karma, you have, the sadhana is just, you know, basically performing the karma, different karma processes, karma sacrifices like that, and then you get material enjoyment. That's the goal. And then you have jnana, the goal is liberation. And then with bhakti, you have sadhana bhakti, and the goal is prema bhakti. So, anyway. So, getting back to the point, is Bhaktivinoda Thakur Acharya is working under Lord Chaitanya's instructions, have distilled the very essence of Krishna consciousness, and given us this essence. And Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master, has distilled the teachings of the Goswamis, and given us the essence of the teachings, or the whole purport, or the reason of the teachings of the six Goswamis, and also how to apply those teachings in the modern world. You know, adjusting the application of the details, not the principles. It's too much, the hum. The hum is just like, now it's all right. Oh, yeah, got to get Jagat back to work. What? Well, Jagat has to... Yeah, it's humming, but I can deal with it more or less. So, Srila Prabhupada has actually distilled this, and the distillation in terms of... Okay, that's better. The distillation in terms of the priorities is mentioned here. The first of all, you know, we have to become Krishna conscious and make others Krishna conscious. And, of course, that's distilled in Lord Chaitanya's two teachings of Jivadoya and Namaruchi. And in Christianity, of course, that's love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and do unto others as you would have others do unto you, or consider others to be like yourselves, like that, the golden rule. So, therefore, because that is our priority, we have to be careful of other details creeping in that may deviate us from that priority. And we've been having this discussion, of course, on the internet. One of the discussions we had was regarding the Pandava Nirjala Kadasi, which, incidentally, is not is not recommended in any of our modern-day Vaishnava literatures, and which is only found in one of the Puranas, and which we're not sure that the Purana is actually in its original pure state. So anyway, so people, the point is, I'm not going to criticize that particular ritual, but people, now we find people getting so much into these details, looking for what we call the golden bullet. I'm not going to describe where that came from, or silver bullet, but I'm not going to describe where that particular statement came from because it had to do with some disease that can't be talked about in Bhagavatam class. Looking for the silver bullet to make you Krishna conscious. And the problem is with these silver bullets, you can look that up on the internet later on, what that means. In other words, like perfect bullet, or like they had to kill werewolves. There's some particular type of bullet they have used anyway. That's silver. But that's not what I'm referring to. It's referring to something else. So, people think, we just have to do this and become Krishna conscious. You just have to do that and become Krishna conscious. And then sometimes people think they know more than Prabhupada, or know more about what's priority than Srila Prabhupada. I mean, I'll give you an example. Or Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when it came time to send someone out to preach, and if they were fasting, he told them not to fast. Actually, he even ordered one time to feed someone rice on Ekadasi. The real story is the person didn't eat the rice. But he said to eat rice, but the person ate anukalt, some non-grain Ekadasi food, and then went out and preached Krishna consciousness. So one sometimes becomes very proud, thinking, I have this different thing that I can do that those devotees don't do, and those devotees are not doing it, and I'm better because I'm doing these particular things. I'm going to become more Krishna conscious because I'm doing these particular things. Well, all glories to you for doing those particular things. But the whole point is, and I'm not going to criticize you for doing those particular things. If you want to do all these different austerities, fine, go for it. But don't lose sight, and don't let it deviate you from Srila Prabhupada's priority, which is how to bring people to Krishna consciousness. Like if you know, or you knew Srila Prabhupada, that if you went to Srila Prabhupada and bragged about, or talked about what austerities you were doing, Prabhupada was not impressed. I mean, actually, Prabhupada was more impressed by preaching, book distribution, and by making devotees than he was by opening temples either, too. I mean, I was with Srila Prabhupada, and there's a story that many of you heard many times, because I've told the story many times, that I was with Srila Prabhupada, and a devotee was showing pictures to Prabhupada of all the decorations in the temple that he had just renovated. And Prabhupada was nodding, please, obviously, please. And then I told Prabhupada about a devotee, about our temple that distributed this devotee distributed 10,000 Bhagavad Gitas in 1 month, and our temple distributed like 35,000 hardbound Bhagavad Gitas in a month. And Prabhupada just his eyes opened wide and said, this devotee has the mercy of Krishna. He was extremely pleased. So you can see, even when Prabhupada came to America one time, and he wanted to bring Tamal Krishna Maharaj back to India because he didn't have anyone else who was sufficiently qualified to manage in India. Tamal Krishna Maharaj knew the way to defeat Prabhupada's plan. Was to show Prabhupada all these new devotees. Each and every new devotee. You one of those people? You were there at that time? Not that time. Of course, many of those devotees had been stolen from temples, but that's another issue. To show all these new devotees, each holding the flower, presenting it to Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada he defeated Prabhupada's plan. And Prabhupada said, no, you stay in America. Like that. Of course, Prabhupada later sent him to China because he had aggravated all the temple presidents. Maybe not all of them. Maybe not the New York one, who's getting the benefit of Radha Damodar Sankara. But anyway, so that's really the point. A Vaishnava becomes superior not simply by a jugglery of words, but by the number of devotees he has created for the Lord. So sometimes, also we spend sometimes like so much time discussing, the details, how many angels you could put on the head of a pin. And we don't discuss that, but that's a Christian thing, isn't it? The Christians discuss like all these details. I remember there was one discussion recently on the internet whether Lakshmi not Lakshmi, whether Devahuti has a parental relationship with Lord Kapiladev. Devahuti, Kapiladev. And it's described in it there that Devahuti felt affection like a cow when Kapiladev went to the woods, took sannyas or whatever, like a cow crying out for the calf. So it's parental. So there's a whole discussion back and forth, and I was thinking, oh my God. Of course I have my own opinion, but we should need to be focused on our purpose. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have those discussions, but for me, we need to have a discussion. Why aren't there more devotees in America? And sit down and talk to each other. Why? And come out with some strategy, because this is Prabhupada's first priority. The Vaishnava becomes superior not simply by jugglery of words, but by the number of devotees he has created. So, that's what I'm getting out of this verse. And so, Lord Rishabha, Rantidev, sorry. So, King Rantidev, because he was a pure devotee and because people followed his mood, like Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishnam, Stapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam, like because Rupa Goswami followed Lord Chaitanya's mood. We are Rupa knew this. So, because they followed his mood and not imitated him, they became the best of yogis. It says, thus they all became the best of yogis. Whether they were inclined to austerity, whether they were not inclined to austerity, whether they were very intelligent, or whether they were not intelligent, they all became the best of yogis. You can assume that there was a variety of different qualities that these people had. Some of them were probably just the cooks in the kitchen, right? Pure followers of Rantidev. And maybe just like Lord Chaitanya came across that Brahmin who was reading, because he was even though he was illiterate, the Bhagavad Gita. And he was reading the Bhagavad Gita because he had got the instructions from his spiritual master. And he was crying, and he became the true knower, the real knower of the Bhagavad Gita, because he was following in the mood and the instructions of his spiritual master. So that's the secret. Don't look for some silver bullet. Something that Prabhupada didn't tell us about. I was just reading about this whole thing with fasting. Prabhupada, on Ekadasi, he said that we should have special feasts. I remember in the early days, Ekadasi I would look forward to as far as the gratification of the tongue. I don't know if that's the right move, but anyway, I said, when is Ekadasi coming? Great! We get to have all these wonderful preparations, garanga potatoes. What else? Carrot halva. Everything with sugar and ghee and sour cream. Because you can take all those things on Ekadasi. Sugar, cream, paneer. Wow, Ekadasi Kija. Anyway. So, of course, that's not the purpose of Ekadasi, and that's not what Prabhupada was teaching us. But Prabhupada was teaching us, be joyful. Prabhupada said to one temple president, your business is to make sure that everybody is jolly and gets plenty of prasadam. And then we become enthusiastic. But Prabhupada pushed us. The first day I joined the Hare Krishna movement, I was out there with a book bag, distributing books. Because that's Prabhupada's move. And that's Prabhupada's priority. So, on that happy note, yes. The book written by the Christian, Purpose-Driven Church, by Rick Warren. It's a famous book. Saved by the Bell. All glory is to His divine grace.